2025 तक वर्ल्ड की थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बनने की कोशिश में
$5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी इसका सपना संजोया है।
भारत सामना कर रहा है कुछ शॉकिंग फैक्ट्स का। आरबीआई की एक रिपोर्ट कहती है इन द ह्यूज पॉपुलेशन ऑफ 140 करोड़ only 6.5% people pays direct taxes, revealing a challenging fiscal landscape for the country.
You see, only 1.6% of India's population pays income tax. 1.6.
कि इस देश के करीब 125 करोड़ देशवासियों का बोझ सिर्फ 5 करोड़ लोग ढो रहे हैं।
In the financial year 2022 to 2023, भारत की रिपोर्टेड नॉमिनल जीडीपी 273 लाख करोड़ रुपए थी, जिसमें से टैक्स कलेक्शन 48 लाख करोड़ रुपए था, रिजल्टिंग इन द टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो ऑफ 17.7%। वहीं डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज एज पर ओईसीडी टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो 34% पर मेंटेन करती है। रिकॉग्नाइजिंग द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ टैक्सेस, इस वीडियो में हम भारत के टैक्स सिस्टम को समझेंगे, विच इज एशियाज सेकंड मोस्ट कॉम्प्लिकेटेड टैक्स सिस्टम, while drawing comparison with tax structures worldwide. Now let's dwell into the intricacies of Indian taxation system.
टैक्स गवर्नमेंट का मेन सोर्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू है, जिसका इस्तेमाल
पब्लिक वेलफेयर, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट, एजुकेशन, स्कॉलरशिप्स, हेल्थ केयर, डिफेंस एंड सेफ्टी, सोशल वेलफेयर स्कीम
एक्सेट्रा के लिए किया जाता है।
How this revenue is collected? It is collected through taxes, cess and surcharges, out of which taxes can be classified as direct and indirect taxes.
बट उससे पहले इंडिया फॉलो अ प्रोग्रेसिव एंड मार्जिनल टैक्स सिस्टम। प्रोग्रेसिव का मतलब है आप जितना अर्न करते हो आप उतने ही ज़्यादा लायबल हो टैक्स देने के लिए। एंड लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड मार्जिनल विद अ सिंपल एग्जांपल।
Suppose you are earning 5 lakh rupees per annum in a job and one day your employer decide to give an increment of 1 lakh rupees per annum. Now you are earning 6 lakh rupees per annum. So according to tax regime, पहले आप 5% टैक्स भरते थे, now you are liable to pay 10% टैक्स। नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता। इंडिया फॉलो मार्जिनल टैक्स सिस्टम. So on the first 0 to 2.5 lakh rupees, you will have to pay no tax, and from next 2.5 lakh rupees to 5 lakh you have to pay 5% tax, and on next 1 lakh rupees you have to pay 10% tax.
इन इंडिया टैक्सेस कैन बी क्लासिफाइड एज डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस एंड इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस। अभी हम क्लासिफिकेशन देख रहे हैं, फिर इसे हम एक सिंपल एग्जांपल से समझने की कोशिश करेंगे।
एंड डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस देयर कम्स पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स, कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स, मिनिमम रिटर्न टैक्स, सिक्योरिटीज ट्रांजैक्शन टैक्स, कैपिटल गेन टैक्स, dividend distribution tax and wealth tax. And in indirect taxes there comes excise duty, customs duty, safeguard duty, anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty and GST.
So let's take a real life example with the help of Tata Motors. So Tata Motors is an automobile company registered in India and it has a manufacturing plant in Lucknow. To manufacture cars, they import raw materials from other countries on which they pay an import duty tax to the government. The main purpose of import duty tax is to protect domestic markets from overwhelmingly cheaper foreign goods. When a business manufactures something in the country, it is liable to pay excise duty tax. But now this tax is included in central GST. To run the company will hire employees, both white collar and blue collar, and those employees will have to pay income tax to the government. When in the start of the month, company pays its employees, the sum amount of income tax is deducted at source, called TDS. Means government collects 50% of your income tax at source. Only rest is filed before the end of the financial year, as per the tax slabs shown on the screen. When these companies sell these cars to the customers, they collect a GST from the customer. Then this collected GST is paid to the government. Different types of product have different GST rates. See, GST is a destination-based tax. And when they export these cars to other countries, they pay an export duty tax. After all this, whatever the business makes, after all the expenses made, they pay a corporate tax to the government. Following are the corporate tax slabs on the screen. So question may arise here why there is no corporate tax on businesses. Because businesses provide employment to lot of people and those people pays income tax. And there is an interesting thing here. In case of an employee, government deducts tax at the source. But in case of a business, taxes are paid after all the expenses are made. Continuing to our example, and when these companies are registered on stock exchange, people start trading their stocks. So whenever people trade any stock, they pay a securities transaction tax to the government. Then there comes capital gain tax, which can be classified as long-term capital gain tax and short-term capital gain tax. Whenever you hold an asset for more than 36 months, you are liable to pay a long-term capital gain tax. But if you sell it before 36 months, you are liable to pay a short-term capital gain tax. For assets like stocks and bonds, this time period is 12 months. इस example में कुछ taxes include नहीं हो पाए. First one is minimum alternate tax. See, our country has a huge informal business sector. So as per law, these businesses have to maintain an accounting book, and as per the profit, they pay a fixed percentage to the government called minimum alternate tax. And there were three strategic taxes: anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, and safeguard duty. So why am I calling it a strategy? See, let us consider safeguard duty. Last year when government restricted the export of basmati rice from the country, if any company wanted to export basmati rice, they had to pay safeguard duty tax to the government, resulting in decline in profits in exports than selling in the domestic market. See, taxes can be used in strategic ways. For example, controlling inflation or imposing behaviors on the citizen. And when all these taxes, direct and indirect, are collected by the revenue department, they are divided between center and state governments. So this was a brief explanation of Indian taxation system. Now let's compare it with the taxation system of developed countries and developing countries. We will draw this comparison on following points: tax percentages, tax to GDP ratio, number of people paying taxes, and facilities provided by the government. See, in India, personal income tax is low compared to the developed countries, which stands at an average income tax of 36%. And among the developing countries also, India has a low percentage of income tax. But to its opposite, in terms of corporate tax, India has a higher corporate tax compared to developed countries, due to which you can see many companies don't prefer to start their business in India. They prefer countries like Hong Kong, Canada, Germany, Switzerland, etc., which have a low corporate tax, even less than OECD average corporate tax.
So the strategy is simple. The countries put less tax on businesses, which attracts more businesses in the country and increase the employment. And from these employees, countries charge high income tax and in return provide good infrastructure, health facilities and education, which overall increase the quality of living, and this also invites more businesses in the country, and the cycle continues. Now let's look into the facilities provided by the government. In developed countries, we can see a lot of social security schemes and healthcare facilities, which includes proper education and sports infrastructure, healthcare facilities, disability benefits, maternity benefits, old age pension schemes. If you are unemployed, you get unemployment benefits. They also provide employment injury insurance, funds for orphanages, and many more. But India is somewhat lagging behind in providing facilities to its taxpayers. Let's start with the education system. तो इंडियन एजुकेशन सिस्टम के तो क्या ही चर्चे। मिडिल क्लास फैमिलीज की आधी इनकम और बच्चे के 14 साल दोनों साथ में बर्बाद हो जाते हैं, which leads to a vicious cycle of poverty and unemployment in the country. We'll talk about it further in the video. ऐसा भी नहीं है कि गवर्नमेंट कुछ फैसिलिटीज़ प्रोवाइड नहीं करती कंट्री में. India's healthcare infrastructure is one of the best in the Asia. We are the largest exporter of the generic medicines, but still बहुत काम हो चुका है और बहुत काम बाकी है. The money from the taxes also goes in the public welfare schemes like cooking gas subsidies, Awas Yojana, schemes like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Ayushman Yojana, and many more. And a big chunk of the government revenues goes into defense and safety. In past few years, we can see a significant increase in the defense budgets, but we can't ignore the issues like police, judiciary, and government offices. कुछ स्टेट्स एंड यूटीज़ में हम देख सकते हैं कि फ्रीबीज बांटने का बहुत चलन है और ये इलेक्शन के टाइम पे और बढ़ जाता है. द रेवेन्यू ऑल्सो गोज इन द इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट इन द कंट्री. नाउ लेट्स डिस्कस द मेजर चैलेंजेस इन फ्रंट ऑफ कंट्रीज टैक्स सिस्टम. सो फर्स्ट इज टैक्स इवेजन एंड ब्लैक इकोनॉमी. As we discussed earlier, there is something called minimum alternate tax. Businesses which are not formally registered as a company have to maintain an accounting book on which they have to pay a fixed percentage as taxes. This results in the underreporting of the income and inflating the expenses and many such fraudulent activities. The second is country's large informal sector. 94% of the country's workforce is employed in the informal sector. इस 94% इन्फॉर्मल सेक्टर के कारण गवर्नमेंट इनसे टैक्स ले ही नहीं पाती है. These 94% of the working force contribute to only 45% of the GDP, and the remaining 6% of the workforce contribute for the 55% GDP of the country. Out of this 94% workforce, half of the people are employed in the agricultural sector of the country. And you know what? Agriculture sector is exempted from tax, which means government don't collect any tax from the agricultural sector. I'm not saying that government should definitely impose taxes on the agricultural sector, but the thing is there are all kind of people. ऐसे भी आपको लोग मिल जाएंगे जिनके पास 300, 400 बीघा ज़मीन है, उनसे तो टैक्स लेना ही चाहिए. At this point you can see the tax system is somewhat unfair in the country.
the people who are paying taxes are not getting as much facilities they deserve. Which takes us to the fourth point, people beliefs towards taxes. As a country, we have somewhat failed in building a healthy tax culture in the country. This is a result of somewhat a lack of nationalism in the citizens. कंट्री की 90% पॉपुलेशन तो टैक्स स्लैब्स में एंटर ही नहीं कर पाती है. एंड नाउ कम्स टू द फाइनल पॉइंट, द cycle of fundamental issues. Let's take the middle class families of the country. They spend a huge amount of their income on education and healthcare of their children and family. And by chance, if they are unable to give proper education to the child, this leads to the unemployment in the country. But still, person had to feed the family, and they get employed in the informal sector of the economy, which results in the tax evasions, and the person stays middle class. And it also results in the low circulation of money in the economy. And a major chunk of the income is going in few sectors like education, healthcare, and industries which fulfill basic needs of the citizen. Whereas the situation is opposite in developed countries. See, the average middle class of those countries get free education for their children and free healthcare facilities. Here they saved a major chunk of their income. In India, where we have a high corporate tax, these countries have a low corporate tax which invites more businesses. So in developed countries, there are surplus employment opportunities, due to which the students get employed in the formal sector of the economy and they are charged with high income tax, जो उनको मिडिल क्लास से तो अपलिफ्ट नहीं करती है, पर उनका स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग यहाँ पर बढ़ जाता है. एंड द बिग चंक ऑफ देयर इनकम विच कुड हैव गॉन इन दी हेल्थ केयर, education and necessary industries flows into the economy, which overall increase the per capita GDP, and there is a low concentration of money. So in this point we discussed there must be free education, free healthcare, low corporate taxes, high employment rates, and a small informal sector of the economy. Remember, whenever in the further videos we talk about taxes, it must remind you that it is the hard-earned money of the citizen of the country. Salaried employees pay TDS before even getting the salary, and rich people have to pay cess and surcharges, and in return don't get much facilities they should be getting. So it's our responsibilities that we make sure government is spending this money on meaningful things. In India, tax evasion is at such an extent that only 2,200 people claim that their annual income is more than 1 crore rupees.